Hey, cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. Ordinarily, I'd be riding outside. It's Central California, summer's knocking on the door, and I need to get some heat training in. It's been pretty cool here. The temperature's going to be going up, and I have this 155-mile event that's coming up in a couple weeks, and it's going to be hotter then, so that's why I need to get the heat training in. Problem is that upwind, there's this 400-acre fire that just started, and the air's mucked up. So, I got to stick inside. And we don't have the air conditioning on because it's cool enough inside, but not in my office where I'm going to be doing this Zwift race. As it turned out, I got to do some heat training. Now, if I was going to ride outside, I was going to do a little bit of high-intensity interval work just to accelerate that heat training and also to give me a little bit of that HIIT type of work because I have some races coming up. This year, I have two distinct goals. One is in racing and one is with this long-distance event that I'm going to be doing. And in the beginning of the year, it was a bit of a challenge on how to do my training, and the training wasn't going so well, and I changed some things, and now the training went a lot better. A couple weeks ago, I had this race that I did quite well in until that crash incident, and I'll have that race video linked in the description below. What I often do at the beginning of these Zwift races is come up with my list of excuses, particularly one that's built in where in a month from now I'm going to be 69. But there's this other 69-year-old, the guy's a little bit older than me, and he got 4th place in this race, and I didn't. Tell you what he did for me in this race. He encouraged me. He showed me that I can still improve, and that is like gold to me. Well, let's talk about this race. This is in New York Central Park, and this is a pretty tough course for me. There's a number of ups and downs in this course, and the length and the grade of some of those ups make this a challenging course for me. We started with 28 riders on this 12.2 mile course. Even though I had that good race a couple weeks back, my upper intensity work has changed in the last couple of weeks, so I was unsure on how I was going to do today. My main tactic, therefore, is to just ride wheels and stay toward the front and not get on the bad side of any type of gaps that happen. Jumping ahead toward the end of the first lap, so at about the 7 mile to go mark, it's getting pretty hot in here. The windows, of course, are closed because of the smoke outside. I have the overhead fan on, but no air conditioning. The door's closed because the fetching Mr. Cycling Greek is working in the next room. I'm overheating a bit. I am too on the edge to connect with those guys, and we're still going uphill. So as I look at the graphics on the right to see who's behind me, the two that were behind me, 39-year-old Bilgun Unkbayer from Mongolia and 61-year-old Greg Lewis from the United States go past me. I've got a little recovery back, so I figure I got to get on these guys' wheels so I can just suck on the wheel for as long as I can. Right now I'm in about 18th place. Again, 28 people in this race. Bilgun, who was the first to race past me, lets off the gas and he goes to the back because his plan is to suck wheel for as long as he can. While we're playing the game of I don't want to work, you work, but let's not get caught, we check out the graphics on the right and we see that the closest person to us is 12 seconds away. The next one is going to be like almost a minute. And that's James Biddles from 55-year-old James Biddles from Australia. I'm thinking, and maybe the others are thinking, that 18 seconds is a big gap to cover on your own. And even though I say on your own, I'm really not doing any work. Bilgun's not doing any work. Greg is pretty much doing all the work. Jumping ahead a bit to the 5.3 mile mark for the last 1.5 miles, we've been pretty much just following Greg and then catching up to Greg when Greg's been trying to get away from us. About this time, I started thinking that I got to be in the back, so I somehow got to switch places with Bilgun. Bilgun wasn't having any of that. In fact, we started playing chicken, and that gave Greg the opportunity to just roll away from us. I was getting hotter and hotter, and I was questioning on how my upper end was really compared to everyone else's. I was good with getting away. Bilgun, however, wasn't, and probably was interpreting what I was doing as being weak. And he probably was right a little bit. So he attacks, he's going after him, I'm going after Bilgun, and fortunately I'm catching up to him right about the time that we're getting to Greg. At this point, I figured we're all coming together, we're all going to slow up a bit. I let up on the pedals, because probably I need to let up on the pedals. They take off. I'm not recovered enough to chase after them, and I just watch them go. Next thing I do is I look at the graphics on the right again, in 18th place again, and Biddles is now about 32 seconds behind me. And we have about 4.3 miles to go, so I start to get my legs back, and then I just work at keeping it constant. My intensity constant for over 2.5 miles. There's now 1.5 miles to go. I make contact with Bilgun. James Biddles, on the other hand, is about 8 seconds behind me. He got as close as 4 seconds behind me. I am keeping an eye on that gap to James, as I'm sure Bill Goon is too. Since I usually correctly assume that everyone else is a better sprinter than I am, I figure I can't get to the line with Bill Goon, because he'll beat me. Bill Goon is excellent at sucking wheel, and I see that James Birtles has now cut down his deficit to us to 3 seconds, so the only choice I figure I have is I just have to attack. I see that I get a quick gap on Bill Goon of 1 second, and that James Birtles is about a second behind him. I then look at the gap to Greg Lewis, and he has about 38 seconds on me, and I'm not going to pull that back in 1 mile. So I turn my focus back to the two that are chasing me, and I'm not only just looking at their gaps, but I'm looking at their watts per kilogram. So I figure I have to keep mine above 3.1, and then I'll have a good chance to get to the finish line before they catch me. I look at the final results of this race. Everyone finished in 1s or 2s. There was no pack finish at all. In fact, going over the results again, there were only 2 groups of 2. Everyone else came in solo. Even though today's result was not spectacular for me, I got some heat training in, I got some high intensity work in, and best of all, I got to play bikes. Returning focus to the graphics on the right, we see that James and Bill Goon have separated. James is now ahead and just 5 seconds behind me. I'm just keeping up the pace. I've now gone under half a kilometer to go, and I'm going to end up getting there before they get to me. So 17th place. I hope you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it. As always, remember that other video is in the description below. Check that out. Comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.